Welcome to Let's Talk Football here on the sportshacks.com. Delighted to say I'm joined once again by a very young Irish journalist by the name of Kevin Bannon, who lives on Merseyside. He's involved with a non-league team who won promotion at the weekend. Kevin, do you want to just give us a little bit about that before we look at the bigger picture, so to speak?
Well, first of all, I will take very young. That's very kind of you. But yeah, no, I was commentating down at Merthyr Town, which a lot of the listeners may not have heard of. National League North final day. So commentating for AFC Fylde, won their third ever National League North title. So back in the National League, where there was obviously real drama between York and
Rochdale and
Rochdale.
York, yeah,
Yeah,
incredible.
the game I was at kicked off at the same time, so I only caught up at the end alongside everyone. So the title race went down to the final day, but not quite as dramatic. They did end up securing it. So
Well,
coming towards the end of seasons now, so it's all in the balance, and
congratulations
luckily
on that.
they got it over the line.
Yeah, congratulations, and I'm sure the celebrations are probably still ongoing. Let's look at the FA Cup first of all, Kevin, before we switch attention to the Premier League. But obviously, a big weekend, the two semi-finals on Saturday. Manchester City, Finn Azaz scored an unbelievable goal for Southampton.
Yeah, it's an absolute cracker, isn't it? And look, having suffered the heartbreak along with all of us, but particularly him, one of the people missing the penalties in that shootout in a game we don't want to discuss too much. To see him get his moment on a stage like that was really cool. I'm a big fan of Finn Azaz as a player. I think he's really good, really technical. I like the spaces he takes up on the pitch. I think he has overall been good for Ireland since he's sort of come into the side in the last 12 months or so, and I do think he'll be a good player for Ireland going forward. But I mean, it's an unbelievable hit, really, when you think about it. I don't know if you saw the footage that TNT released of the lads, McCoist and Gerrard in the commentary box. They're just looking at each other. It's a phenomenal goal. And look, I know Nico Gonzalez got a fine one himself to win it for City, but for Azaz, look, for Southampton, it obviously didn't go the way they want in the end. But for Azaz himself, a moment like that, I'm sure he won't forget it, and a good way to sort of get Prague away from your mind as much as possible.
They can certainly be proud of their run to the Cup semi-final. But for Manchester City now, first time in the history to do 4 consecutive FA Cups, and the treble remains on.
Yeah, look, the domestic treble is there. It's within their hands. Obviously, they've won the League Cup already. They'll fancy themselves, I think, against Chelsea, who will get on to obviously shortly. And we talked last week about how they feel in control in this title race, despite them now dropping down to second with Arsenal winning at the weekend. They know how to win these games. They know how to win these trophies. Guardiola has sort of reshaped this squad in a way, but that sort of identity and grit of winning is still there within the group of players. And look, you talk about the achievement, 4 straight FA Cup finals. Obviously, they lost the last 2, so they'll want to rectify that. And the difficult thing I find with Manchester City, and I'm sure I'm not the only one here, you might agree with me, these achievements, I mean, you can't really take them at face value given the elephant in the room. I mean, these charges are still hanging over them. The investigation started back in 2018. We're in 2026 now. The charges were brought against them in 2022. The club obviously denied them and say they're innocent, and we still haven't got the outcome. But for me, and you could say the same with the title as well, would this be 6 and 7 if they were to win this season? It just doesn't like wow you as much as it really should, I don't think. And that's a consequence of how they potentially got there. Obviously the decision hasn't come through, but until this elephant in the room is solved, I honestly think every single conversation when it comes to Manchester City winning trophies should go back to that.
The interesting point was made by some Leicester City fans and some commentators during the week that they were punished They were punished badly. They've been relegated now. They've gone down to League One, and there may still be more punishments to come next season. We don't know that yet. But the irony was pointed out that here Leicester City are now two divisions down from the side that won the title 10 years ago, and you still have ongoing investigations into Manchester City, which are nearly 10 years old.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, you look at Everton last season, and they got points deducted for something similar. Chelsea have been punished by the FA as well this season, in the last few weeks. I know they didn't get a points deduction; it was a fine and potentially a youth transfer embargo, I think. And look, you can argue, look, it's 115 charges. These things take time. It's a massive case. It's the biggest case potentially we've ever seen, but the fact that these charges were brought against him in 2022, we're nearly 6 years on from that. 4 years on from that, excuse me. 6 years on from when, 7 years on, excuse me, from when the investigation started. And I think people just want the resolution. And the Premier League are stuck here. Either way, they're stuck. They're the ones who brought the charges against them. If they charge them, they kind of admit they're main competition, the competition that is the best in the world, the biggest league in the world, the most watched league in the world, has essentially been a sham for the past decade, really. But if they don't charge them, you'll have 19 other clubs, even more, as you mentioned, Leicester City, up in arms saying, well, they can't just get away with this. So they're in a really, really tricky spot here. And look, it goes to a much deeper issue of state-owned clubs, which I'm not a fan of in the slightest for various reasons. But City as a whole, as an entity, as an organization, it just doesn't feel like these achievements are celebrated as much as they could be if it was built, say, more organically, you could say. And 4 FA Cup finals in a row is a phenomenal achievement. But there's just this taint on it that won't go away until this issue is solved.
As we said, there's an asterisk there. There was an exclamation mark against Chelsea all week, Kevin. They got rid of the manager, Enzo Fernandez, who had been banned for 2 games by said Lingmer Senior. Of all people, captain today, scores the goal. Good first half. Leeds came back into a second half, but Leeds, I think, would be disappointed with how they performed. But a big result for Chelsea, a big result for Callum McFarland, who's the interim manager.
Yeah, it's massive. In a way, I think Chelsea show who they really are as a group of players. They were frankly awful midweek against Brighton, bordering on disgraceful, you could argue, in that performance. I read somewhere they didn't complete a tackle in the game until the 40th minute mark, which seems impossible. And yet I thought they were really good, particularly in the first half today. And it just kind of says, well, we got rid of the manager that we didn't quite like and we sort of weren't playing for him. Now that he's gone, it turns out we can actually play football. And Enzo, he's nearly the epitome of that. As you said, banned because he was talking about how much he loves Madrid as a city.
Banned by his own manager. I mean, it's unheard of.
Yeah.
He weakened his own team by banning them.
Yeah, exactly. And look, Fernandez, I think he's a very good footballer. I think he is sort of caught between, is he an 8, is he a 10? He certainly has ability. Chelsea paid way over the odds from after coming off that World Cup where he won Young Player of the Tournament. The funny thing is, I think there's a very slim chance he's still at the club next season. There was that report from The Athletic during the week that City had sort of identified him as a potential midfielder. And there's no doubt whatsoever Real Madrid will probably have a sniff around him in the summer because they need to rebuild their whole midfield. And he does strike you as a bit of a Real Madrid player, to be fair, particularly within this current crop. Look, I thought he played well today. In fact, I thought all the midfield 3 that started were really good. Caicedo and Lavia and Fernandez, if they can get them together more often, they will be good. And I think, particularly in the first half, that's where the game was won and lost. They just overcrowded Leeds in the middle. You had Tanaka and Ampadu just sort of chasing shadows a bit around those 3 lads. I thought Neto looked lively. And yet Leeds will be disappointed.
Some of Neto's league play was excellent.
Yeah, and this is the frustrating thing for Chelsea fans. Neto can be really good, but again, it's that inconsistency, isn't it? it's like so many of their players. I think it does help when João Pedro is fully fit and firing. He has been one of the best players for them this season. But yet Leeds will be disappointed, and Farke maybe nearly underestimated Chelsea, you could argue, considering all that they've been through. Not that he was thinking he could turn up, but Leeds obviously had the momentum. I think they were unbeaten in 7 coming into this, nearly guaranteed safety. They would have fancied themselves. But Chelsea, I mean, they've spent how many billions of pounds on this squad? It's about time they showed it. And in a way, they've nothing to lose here against City in the final, so you might as well just go hell for leather to try win it.
Leeds will take, you would imagine, some comfort from the fact that, as you said, they're almost safe and they've played themselves into that position, to be fair to them. Before we go off the Chelsea topic, we spoke to you last week. You threw the name Cesc Fabregas into the mix, and I see now where he is being spoken about. His club have given him permission that if Chelsea do want to come knocking, Como have said, we will never stand in your way, Cesc. So, interesting.
Yeah. Look, I think they'd be silly not to try and see if he's interested. They've won again today, Como. They're in 5th. I know they were in Serie A. They had a bit of a slide down the table. They're still pushing for European football. And if you can get that, it will be a massive, massive achievement. I think for Chelsea, he's an intriguing option. The problem is, who wants to go into Chelsea now? Who really does want that job? Fabregas is a viable option. I think if you're looking to sort of continental, interesting European coach route, he'd probably be your number one choice. A name you could maybe keep an eye on is Sebastian Hoeneß at Stuttgart. Won the cup there last year. He's going for a Champions League spot again, having qualified another season. He's maybe the option B for if they want to go real exciting. But I was thinking, and having watched Coventry City lift the championship trophy today, is there any way that Super Frankie Lampard would be tempted for a third time? I mean, it would be.
He knows the club.
I mean, it would be great. It would be quite funny as well. But you could nearly see it, given what Chelsea are like now upstairs with their owners, given what we know about Lampard. And look, to be fair to Lampard, I haven't really been a fan of him as a manager in his career thus far. What he's done at Coventry is a really, really good job. And maybe he has learned from his mistakes at Chelsea and at Everton and at Chelsea again. And he's brought that to Coventry, and he's a more rounded and better manager. That's completely could be the case.
What's impressive with him, Kevin, is Coventry City, 25 years they've waited to get back into the top flight of English football. So they have not had parachute payments. They have not had the money.
No.
They were nearly bankrupt. They've lost their ground. They got their ground back. Their new owner has really turned the club upside down. So Lampard has done a job. Absolutely, he's done a job. And Chelsea need a PR win here.
They do. And who better? Like, when you think of that great Chelsea team in the early 2000s, there's two that spring to mind. I mean, Lampard, yes, you're not going to get John Terry in there. Let's be realistic.
He's going to Colchester. He's going to buy Colchester United.
There you go. Exactly. Look, as much as Lampard would be fun as a third time, you have to leave Jose at Benfica. You just can't go back to that well once again. And look, I don't think, looking further into the Premier League, Glasner is not going to take that job. He's already fallen out with owners at his current club. That's why he's not saying. I think we've discussed Iraola. I think it's a very good chance he goes back to Bilbao, where he came through as a player. That posting is now. So, look, I think for Chelsea fans, Fabregas would be a really, really good appointment. Do you also have a sniff around Xabi Alonso? Now that Slot seems to be staying, you could argue that he'd be really good as well. There's some interesting candidates out there, but I think number one for me, if I was Chelsea, would be Fabregas.
Just as an aside, I don't know if you've been at Colchester's ground, but there's a drive-through. There's a drive-through Harry Greggs. Now, I mean, if you like a Cornish pasty, there's a drive-through Harry Greggs at Colchester United.
Why hasn't he bought it sooner?
I was amazed when I saw that, but there you go. A little fact out of nothing. 1-0 to the Arsenal.
Yes.
Against Newcastle United. They're back on top of the league. Declan Rice says, just Calm down. There's still a lot of work to do. Psychologically, though, to get a win, to get back on top, as they got injured, which is going to be a worry for them ahead of the Champions League semi-final in Madrid, but psychologically important.
Massive. Um, Obviously, given last weekend, that was their fourth defeat in a row in like domestically with the League Cup and the FA Cup and 2 Premier League games on the spin. So to get a you get this Newcastle side at the right time as well. They're just free falling down the table, but really important. Look, it wasn't pretty. Was it ever going to be? Probably not. Eze gets the goal, and that's the reason you bring him in. I think one of the biggest problems with Arsenal this season has been that lack of quality in the final third, and that's why they rely so heavily on set pieces. Obviously,
Another one.
They did again.
Yeah,
it did happen again, but maybe they do need that extra bit of quality. And I know Eze has been a bit inconsistent in terms of the quality he's shown in an Arsenal shirt that we know he has. But it's contrasting to that Manchester City front line of Doku, Haaland, and Cherki. Arsenal don't have that type of quality in their front line. The big money striker hasn't worked. Havertz has been in and out through injury. Odegaard and Saka, same as, and now Eze, as you said, has been injured as well. Look, Arsenal just need to keep plugging away. We discussed last week, in a way, they have a sense of freedom now because the bottle job has already happened to a degree. You know, they lost top spot. Fulham at home, West Ham away, Burnley at home, Palace away. That is not a bad run-in. You can definitely see them winning all those games. And look, it doesn't have to be pretty. This is the thing. You can win
1-0.
all of these games 1-0. That's all it takes.
Nobody will care.
Nobody will care. It's been so long. Arteta won't care. You saw that outburst of emotion from him. You know, there's a lot of debate whether he's too highly strung emotionally and that has an effect on the players, that imprints on the players. We'll never know because we're not inside the dressing room. But all he can do now is keep his side focused on task. But as you brought up there, and I think we'll get on, this game midweek is huge against Atletico. And I do wonder, in the back of their heads, when they saw the draw being made and saw they'd face either Barca or Atletico in the semi-final, would they have been thinking, do you know what, Barca may be a bit more beatable?
Yeah. And Simeone, for me, should have been Arsenal manager about 10 years ago. I just think he would have.
Yeah.
And I'm still amazed he hasn't gone into English football at some stage. I mean,
yeah,
he's probably coming to the end of his time because he's had an awful long time at Atletico. I'd love to see him in the game in England. Interesting stat is that 72.44% chance now of Arsenal winning the league, according to Opta. The modern game is surrounded by statistics. So Arsenal now 72.44% chance. Wednesday, is it going to hinder the league in some ways? The size of this Champions League task.
Look, I think the good thing for Arsenal is that they have Saka coming back. I think Odegaard is back now and Havertz has been back. So they are getting their injured players returning at a good time. The Atletico game will take it out of them physically. We know, look, it's not the same Atletico team as the sort of 14-16 where it's completely backs against the wall, defend, sit in and hit you on the break. It is slightly different, but they still can go back to a version of that. And they've nothing really else to play for, this Atletico side. They'll qualify for the Champions League in the league. They obviously lost the Copa del Rey final last weekend, so that's gone. This is their only thing. And as you said, Simeone maybe at the end of the line here. Look, I think the 15 million euros a year contract probably does help him stick around for a bit more. He might be gone. Antoine Griezmann, who's been a phenomenal player for them, is leaving. He's going to MLS in the summer. It would be an incredible way. The one trophy that's eluded Simeone in this amazing run over 15 years or so. I think it will be tight. I do expect Arsenal to just about come through, because I just think Atletico have this sort of psychosis issue about them when it comes to the Champions League, where they just can't seem to get it done, even though they're underdogs and it doesn't seem likely. They sometimes put themselves in a position to do it, and then they just can't follow through. Now, the advantage for them is Real Madrid aren't in the competition anymore, who are their ultimate bogeyman in this competition. But I just think, in terms of Arsenal and the Premier League, I think if they can get through the first leg unscathed, injuries-wise, they'll fancy themselves at home in the second. And I do think that they will be able to manage both competitions. I mean, this is the reason that they went for depth in the summer in the transfer market. Instead of spending all of the Madueke and Gyökeres money on one player, say an Alexander Isak, they decided to spread it out. This is what it's for, so you compete in multiple fronts as the season draws to a close. I think if they're going to win a trophy, it'll be one or the other. I don't see them winning two.
Interesting.
So I think they'll just about get past Atletico. But look, we'll see Wednesday. And then, like I said, they have Fulham. It's Fulham at home then on Saturday, which they'll fancy as well. It's a relatively okay fixture to have after the Champions League as well. Another home game.
We'll talk about them very briefly because I want to ask you about the bottom of the table before we wrap up. But, Isak scored finally for Liverpool.
He did. Bit late, you'd have to say. Look, he's been.
He has to be on the pitch to score, to be fair to him.
He does.
Which has been a bit of a problem.
That's probably a bit mean from me. But he did score. I think, again, we discussed this last week. Slot's biggest thing now is getting this front line to take next season, excuse me. The whole excuse for Isak early in the season before he got injured was he hasn't had a preseason, so he's not fit. He's not going to get much of a preseason this summer because Sweden are at the World Cup and he'll be fit for that. That could do as his preseasons. Obviously, Florian Wirtz was on the score sheet as well. It's a really nice goal from him. Again, Sean Flash is not consistent enough for me. When you spend this amount of money, these lads have to work. And again, something we discussed the other week, this Ekitike long-term injury might actually help Isak. He'll be the main man. He'll be the number one guy. Salah's not there anymore. It's nearly, you could argue, right, Alexander, sit him down and say, it's your team now. Lead us.
Show us why we went to all that trouble and all that effort and all that money and
exactly.
so much angst with Newcastle to get you. And as you say, it looks like Salah could have played his last game for Liverpool, which is unfortunate because he's been such a player. But finally, Kevin, the relegation battle. I mean, you said last week Spurs would survive on the last day of the season. They thought they'd done it. They thought they were a huge step closer to surviving last weekend. And they score in the 82nd minute and Wolves score in the 90th. Or sorry, not Wolves. West Ham score in the 92nd minute. Stay 2 points clear. Unbelievable.
Sometimes you just have to be lucky. Sometimes you just have to have a bit of luck, and they haven't had any. The goal from Callum Wilson is huge, and look, I think it's a straight shootout between themselves and West Ham. Forest obviously got that massive win Friday night, so pulled them away. Compounded by Xavi Simons, looked bad injury. Solanke off injured as well. It's not good. They got the win, but it's just been snatched away with events at West Ham. I mean, and you look at their run-ins: Spurs, Villa away, Leeds at home, Chelsea away, Everton home. That's tough. West Ham, Brentford away, Arsenal home, Newcastle away, Leeds at home. That's tough as well. Both of them have home games on the last day of the season. I'm gonna stick to my guns.
Oh, controversial.
I'm gonna stick to my guns here, and I'm gonna say West Ham will drop points against Arsenal and against Brentford away, and I think Spurs will pull out one big win. maybe against Chelsea away from home.
They love a game against Chelsea, to be fair. That's
Exactly.
always been
And I think they'll just do it. Whether they deserve to or not is a different matter altogether. But I'm going to stick to my guns because you have to have conviction when it comes to these predictions.
so
And
Spurs to stay
on the
up.
last day, Spurs to stay up.
Kevin Bannon, thank you for your time as always on Let's Talk Football. We will talk looking ahead to the weekend later in the week. But for now, we thank you for your contribution.
Cheers, Carl.